This is an urgent tactical update. Go inside the most unforgiving anti-submarine engagement ever launched. 4 Russian boats push straight through the screen around a US carrier, and the first battle is only there to hide the second. 03:42. On a Tuesday night in the Eastern Mediterranean, ANSQR-20 multifunction, towed array aboard USS Delbert D, black tracks 4 low-frequency transient contacts closing the carrier screen. The sonar team first reads them as layered merchant screw noise bleeding through a bad thermal break, and not as a deliberate Russian push through the formation's outer arc. They are right about the layer. They are completely wrong about the intent. The contacts sit on bearings 037, 0404, 061, and 074 at 19.8 nautical miles, all 4 holding depth between 68 and 74 meters, and all 4 correcting course by less than 2 degrees every 40 seconds. That pattern does not belong to drifting traffic. It belongs to boats that know exactly where the carrier will be when they fire. By the time the acoustic supervisor updates the classification board, the room stops arguing about clutter. It starts counting launch baskets. 033. The force resolves as 4 Project 636, 3 improved Kilo-class attack submarines, diesel-electric boats built for the Black Sea Fleet between 2010 and 2016, each able to creep at 1.5 meters per second on batteries or sprint, submerged at 20 knots or 10.3 meters per second, when stealth no longer matters. Their danger does not come from speed. It comes from silence, geometry, and what they carry. Each boat mounts 6 533mm torpedo tubes and can launch 3 M54 Kalibr anti-ship missiles, weapons that cruise at inertial navigation with satellite correction before the terminal section lights and accelerates toward 2.9 Mach under active radar guidance. That matters because the submarine does not need to win the first exchange. It only needs to stay quiet long enough to force the screen, to spend the wrong cells on the wrong problem. 4 kilos moving in parallel through a layered sea-state strain, every conventional defense system at once. The towed array loses separation, passive classification slows, helicopters have to spread, and every RUM-139C vertical launch anti-submarine, rocket fired now, is one less Mark 41 cell available later. Lieutenant Commander Adrian Keane has 14 minutes and 18 seconds before all 4 boats cross into a clean Kalibr launch basket. 0347. The escalation arrives exactly when the first prosecution pattern should have simplified the board. Instead, the board multiplies. At 0347-12, ANSQR-20 begins picking up 8 short burst broadband signatures, moving away from the main tracks at 6 knots. Classic self-propelled acoustic decoys thrown into the water to force the Americans to waste time separating machinery from theater. At 3746, the embarked MH-60R Seahawk drops a second sonobuoy string, 12 buoys wide, across the carrier's projected path, and 2 of the 4 original contacts dive under the layer, while the other 2 accelerate to 9 knots and then stop again, as if they are trading noise on purpose. They are. Keane writes the numbers on the grease board himself because he does not want anybody softening them with phrasing. 4 submarines, 8 decoys, 4 VL-ASROC left, 1 airborne Mark 54 already committed from the helicopter. At 03 at 44, the situation becomes critical. USS Delbert D. Black now holds 2 ready VL-ASROC rounds and 1 airborne torpedo against 4 submarines, masked by 8 decoys inside 11.8 nautical miles of the carrier's track. Keane does not panic. He lifts his headset off one ear, presses 2 fingers against the plot glass at the forward's next turn point, and recognizes the math in the only form that matters. The submarines do not need to break the screen with torpedoes. They only need to make the screen empty itself. 039. Keane requests immediate reserve fire authority, a hard 25-knot starboard turn for the carrier, and permission to break emission control with active sonar across the entire inner ring. The request goes from Delbert D, Black to the Strike Group Anti-Submarine Warfare Commander, and then to the carrier, because USS Gerald R. Forward has aircraft in recovery, and any abrupt course change will foul the deck wind in less than a minute. Nobody wants to be the voice that brings a jet back to a pitching deck with a bad angle and a submarine still unconfirmed. The answer does not come in time. The AN-Brass Q-89 continues to prioritize the best probability real tracks, and the fire recommendation stays green because the algorithm is doing exactly what it was designed to do. At 03:49:41, the 7th VL-ASROC fires. At No 351, the 8th and 9th leave the rail in quick succession. Keen kills automatic recommendation 4 seconds later, but the cells are already committed. The forward anti-submarine magazine for his sector hits 0 at 0358. The tactical picture still shows 4 submarines inside the basket. Now they have what they came for. 0345. The real attack launches the instant the last anti-submarine rocket leaves the ship. At 03M554, Kalibr anti-ship missiles break the surface from bearing 041 and 79, 6 from each axis. Booster plumes climbing nearly vertical before each weapon pitches over and levels at 15 meters above the sea. Keen sees the symmetry immediately and hates it for exactly what it means. The submarines were never trying to torpedo the nearest destroyer. They were trying to drain the screen's undersea cells and then convert that empty column into a missile lane toward the carrier. The first missiles are 24.6 nautical miles from USS Gerald R forward when they settle into cruise. Their time to impact on USS Delbert D, black, is 2 minutes and 42 seconds. Their time to impact on the carrier is 3 minutes and 06 seconds. Interceptor count remaining in Keen's anti-submarine sector, 0. The trap is complete and stated plainly in the room without anybody needing to say it out loud. 4 submarines forced a destroyer to spend 9 cells hunting quiet contacts. The same submarines now use the gap to throw 12 missiles through the exact corridor they just created. 0351. Chief Warrant Officer 4, Elena Markham, speaks before Keen asks, because she has already been working the problem on a yellow pad beside the gunline display. She is Delbert D, Black's gun weapons officer, and before this tour she spent 36 months at Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren, calibrating variable time airburst patterns against GQM-163, Coyote sea-skimming target drones. Markham does not ask for more missiles, because there are no more missiles that solve this axis fast enough. She asks for the Mark 45 Mod 4 5-inch gun. Her solution is not elegant. It is geometric. She feeds the Mark 160 gun computer system a non-standard anti-missile ladder, bearing 041 first, opening range 5,400 yards, burst altitude 18 meters, rate of fire 20 rounds per minute, 14 rounds total, 3-second firing interval, variable time fuses, 85-yard lateral walk across the inbound lane, then immediate shift 31 degrees right to the second axis. The idea is savage and simple. Do not chase 12 sea skimmers with 12 perfect impacts. Detonate steel above the flight paths, tear apart terminal seekers, throw hot fragments into inlet faces, and force the surviving weapons to fly through a wall of blast and debris dense enough to turn guidance into noise. Keen looks at the empty anti-submarine column, looks back at Markham, and approves the shot in one word, 0351. The transmission goes at 0351, execute airburst ladder, bearing 041. The first 5-inch round bursts at 0351, 17 meters above the lead Kalibr pair, and the fragmentation cone punches straight down through the left missile's nose and intake before the right weapon can react. The second burst lands 85 yards wider at 0351-22. The third arrives at no catches 2 more missiles is due, but 5 missiles are gone. By no 31 farfan, when do 1 farfan fine. It catches Hibar 5 and fine. By Torvin the surviving weapons do what Markham needed them to do. They tighten, correct toward the same surviving radar picture, and bunch themselves inside the second ladder. That choice kills them. At 0351-44, the reciprocal bearing fan from the missile lanes gives USS Thomas Hudner a fixed launch datum back to the firing boats, and Hudner fires 2 RUM-139C rounds down the same corridor the Russians used to attack. The last missile detonates at 0351-54. The first American counter-strike torpedo acquires at 0350-39 and detonates at 0352-46 beneath the lead Kilo. The second explodes at 0351 beside another hull. One submarine breaks apart and sinks. One loses propulsion and goes dead in the water. 2 dive north and abort. Over the sea, black smoke rises in vertical columns. White water hangs where the torpedoes found steel. And then the whole corridor goes quiet at once. 031. The transmission goes at 031-12. Mount 51 execute airburst ladder bearing 041. The first 5-inch round bursts at 0351, 17 meters above the lead Kalibr pair, and the fragmentation cone punches straight down through the left missile's nose and intake before the right weapon can react. The second burst lands 85 yards wider at near 351.22. The third arrives at near 3 at 51.25 and catches two more missiles as they begin their terminal pop-up, turning one into a white fireball and shoving the other hard into the sea. By 3 at 50, 5 missiles are gone. By 3 at 33.8, 8 are gone. The surviving weapons do what Markham needed them to do. They tighten, correct toward the same surviving radar picture, and bunch themselves inside the second ladder. That choice kills them. At 0 at 3:51:44, the reciprocal bearing fan from the missile lanes gives USS Thomas Hudner a fixed launch datum back to the firing boats, and Hudner fires two RUM-139C rounds down the same corridor the Russians used to attack. The last missile detonates at 0 at 3:51 Vasam The first American counterstrike torpedo acquires at 0 at 35 and detonates at 0 at 35.6 beneath the lead kilo. The second explodes at 0 at 3:51 beside another hull. One submarine breaks apart and sinks. One loses propulsion and goes dead in the water. Two dive north and abort. Over the sea, black smoke rises in vertical columns. White water hangs where the torpedoes found steel. And then the whole corridor goes quiet at once. 0333. Keane writes the engagement log by hand before the digital record catches up. Threat defeated. Ford no hit. Delbert D. Black Splinter DMG only. KIA-0W2. FWDS Rock Mag 0. 12 ASM neutralized. 1 SSK sunk, 1 SSK disabled, 2 SSK withdrew. He signs it. Transcade went to the room with the weight it deserves. A submarine attack does not fail when the first weapon misses. It fails when the launch point survives long enough to try again.